Welcome to Dark Horse Auto and Diesel. In this video, I show you how to basically rebuild an entire R-134a automotive air conditioning system. I'll show you how to replace the compressor, the orifice tube, accumulator, how to flush the system, and how to recharge it when you're done. The concepts of this video will apply to pretty much every R-134a system in existence. The component designs, the location, ease of access will vary greatly between vehicles. I mean, some cars you have to have a tire taken off just to get to the compressor. But besides those factors, if you have an R-134a system, regardless of the year, make, or model, the basic procedures that I show you will be pretty much the same. If you happen to be working on a 99 to 03 Ford Super Duty with a 7.3 Power Stroke, everything will be exactly the same since that's what I'm working on. If you want information on how to diagnose a worn-out compressor, which is why I had to do this job in the first place, a video for that is linked in the description. And for your convenience, here's a picture of an R-134a pressure chart. You may want to screenshot that for use later on. So before I start tearing into everything here, I've got everything laid out here on the workbench. I'm gonna show you what all I've got here. I bought a complete kit to do this for the AC stuff. It's got the compressor here, new accumulator slash dryer, whatever you want to call it. Came with oil, a new orifice tube, Schrader valves, caps, crap ton of O-rings. See how many of those actually get used. I think this is just trash for, if you're an actual shop. I got a container of AC flush. That way we can flush out the condenser and the evaporator coil. And then some rental tools. We got this guy here. This is the AC flush kit. All these rental tools I got from AutoZone. I prefer to use O'Reilly, but they don't carry these at my local stores, so I had to go to the place I don't like to go. And this here, I'm not too fond of this. You're supposed to hook this up to shop air, and it doesn't have a good way to do it, so I have this that I'm just going to install temporarily. I'm definitely not giving that to them. This is the orifice tube removal tool. Oh, by the way, this was somehow within the last 12 hours I lost the receipt for this, but this was about $80 to rent, I think. This here was about $7 to rent, and as the name implies, it's for removing and reinstalling the orifice tube. The gauge set that I previously mentioned, that was $130 to rent. And then obviously we need a vacuum pump to pull a vacuum on the system, and that was $173. Mind you, when you return this stuff, you get all your money back, so essentially it's free. And then here's the receipt for the component kit that I got. Never mind the belt tensioner, that's just something else I'm doing while I'm in here. So, actual cost of everything, subtract the cost of the belt tensioner, you're looking at a little over $200, and we're essentially refurbishing the entire air conditioning system. So, at the end of the day, it's really not too bad of a price for everything. And I'd also recommend having a scale here for measuring out the refrigerant as we're putting it in. The only thing I don't have yet is the refrigerant, but it's not a big deal. We'll worry about that later. So the first thing you need to do before you get started tearing any of this stuff apart is to evacuate the air conditioning system. I would highly recommend you take it to a shop that can do it, that has the equipment, because I'm pretty much guaranteeing that if you're watching this video, you probably don't have the thousands of dollars worth of equipment in your garage to do this. So I've already done it. I already took it to a shop, had the system evacuated responsibly. Just don't vent it to the atmosphere. I can't stress that enough. It's pretty bad for the environment. It's over 1,000 times stronger of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. Some of you might not care about that, but even if you don't, another thing you should care about is the fines associated with it if you somehow get caught venting this stuff to atmosphere. I believe it's like $10,000 for the fine. So just don't do it. Just pay a shop, have it evacuated the right way, and you're good. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get the belt off here, and just a 1/2 inch breaker bar right on the tensioner. Simple enough. And then I'll just pop this wire off while I'm here. This is for the clutch coil. Next, I'm going to take this off here. This is going to be a 10 millimeter. And just keep in mind too that sometimes as you're taking this apart, there might still be a little bit of pressure left in the system. We're loose. It looks like we're good here. And now I'm going to go ahead and pop the compressor off. These are 10 millimeters. Next, we'll take our accumulator off here, and it's going to be a 13 millimeter deep well for that bolt or nut. Then we'll loosen this up here, and 1 1/16 fits pretty good on this side, and 1 1/4. It's a little snug, but good enough. It's probably metric, but it's close enough. Wow, it's tighter than I expected.
Giggity.
And you might be wondering why we're replacing this part as well, the accumulator. And the reason for that is really anytime you open up the air conditioning system to the atmosphere, you want to replace the accumulator because there's a desiccant material in it that absorbs moisture from any outside air. And you know, for as cheap as these things are, it's just cheap insurance just to make sure that your AC system is actually going to last. I think you can buy them individually for like 20 bucks or something. Well worth the investment, because you don't want to have to open this back up again and pay more money for refrigerant and just have to do more work. So I don't know about you, but I didn't want to do this the first time. I certainly don't want to do it right the second time. And then we'll unclip this. And this is actually a double locking clip, so it's kind of a pain to get off. Kind of hard to show and explain on video, but once you start digging in, you'll see what I mean. You kind of got to come in from both sides in order to pop it loose. There we go. And then we'll just go ahead and unclip this pressure switch down here while we're at it. Then we'll remove the screws that hold this thing in. There's one here, and then there's one back over here too. You'll be able to see it once you look. And these are 8 millimeter or 5/16. And right down here is the other one, if you can't find it. Lighting sucks. And there's a third one down there too that I just somehow forgot about. It's real fun to get to. Probably should have just taken the intercooler pipe off. It might have been easier than screwing with all this. Finally. Now we need to take this apart because this is where our orifice tube is going to be, and we're replacing that while we're in here. And here you'll need a set of disconnect tools like this for fuel lines and air conditioning. They make metal ones that are a lot better than these crap plastic ones that I have, but these were cheap and had them for years and they still work, so. Now up in this side here is our orifice tube. And so what we're going to do is get this locked into that and then use this tool to remove it. Oof. And that's why we replaced the orifice tube while we're in here, because
that's nasty.
it's also why we're going to flush the system as well. I do want to stop here and mention something real quick. As nasty as this thing is, this definitely was not our problem, because if the orifice tube is completely clogged, you're actually going to have really high side pressure. And as we saw at the beginning of the video, my high side pressure was actually low. So, yeah, this I'm sure affected the efficiency of it, but that's not why it didn't really work at all. So the first thing we're going to do is just blow air through the different parts of the system, through the evaporator up here, blow the lines out, and blow out the condenser too. And you always want to blow it backwards. So under normal operations, this is going to be your inlet, and this is the outlet on the evaporator coil. So we're going to blow it in this way, and this part might get a little messy. So if you want to keep things clean, you might want to get something to kind of keep this contained. I'm just going to blow it out because I don't really care. I'm going to hose the motor down when I'm done anyway. I don't have any thread tape, so we got a little leak there. Well, I have thread tape. I'm just not wasting it on this. So let's see. Now there's no solvent in this can right now. This is just going to be straight air. And make sure you have a pressure regulator. It says right there, no more than 125 psi. So let's see if this thing blows up in my face at 90. Alright. Alright. Then we'll just go through and just back flush all of the different lines and components of the system. We'll just keep that on here until it quits blowing crap out. Now we'll go ahead and dump our flushing solvent in here. See how messy this gets. I'm not going to use a whole lot of it on the evaporator because there's not a whole lot of system there that really needs to be flushed, but still going to hit it a little bit here. And we'll just put pretty much the rest of this, in this part of the system. Alright, we'll let that sit for a little bit. And then we'll hit it with more air. I've given this stuff, I don't know, probably a good 15-20 minutes to soak in there and do its job. So now we get to make a freaking mess. And I've switched to a different blowgun that flows a little bit more air. So we'll just be careful to start with here. And we'll just want to keep the air on it until we see no more stuff coming out of any of the components. We want this to be as dry as possible. We'll let that sit to let anything evaporate a little bit more, and then we'll hit it again with air in a couple minutes. In the meantime, while I was waiting for some more of that solvent to evaporate, I went ahead and cleaned these little mounting points up a little bit. That way the pump sits level. And also I went ahead and pulled the Schrader valve out of the high side here. And you will need a special tool for that. It's not a standard size Schrader valve like what you see on a tire. It's a little bit bigger. Conveniently, my tool has both sides for tires and then like AC. For some reason, mine was boogered up, and I actually pretty much had to use screwdrivers to get it out. I couldn't get the tool to really go over it, but Obviously I did get it out, and now with this opened up, we're going to flush it out a little bit more with just some compressed air, get everything cleaned up, make sure there's no solvent still left in there and no debris. I also cleaned this up here too, just to get any residual O-ring material off of it. This blocking this port off here so it blows any crap that fell down the straighter valve hole, blows it out of there. Then we'll grab the new straighter valve here and we'll get that installed. And what I like to do is take a little bit of the compressor oil, just a little dab, just to make sure that everything goes together smooth. Let's get a little bit on the O-ring there, keep it from snagging on the way in. And just get it pretty snug. I don't have a torque spec, but don't be stupid with it. Then we'll grab our new orifice tube. Again, a little bit of oil on the O-rings and get that stuck in. Make sure you put it in the right way. And all I'm doing here is just using this tool to make sure that I've got it fully seated. Just kind of push on it. That's all you need to do. And then we'll replace these O-rings here. And then, of course, a little dab of oil. There you go. Push it in until you hear it click. Next we'll get our new accumulator ready to put in. Now we'll get our pressure switch off the accumulator here. And this will be a 17 millimeter or 11/16 fit pretty well too, but 17 feels better. And as always, we'll put a little bit of oil on that. Then we'll get this dropped back into place. And since this being here is going to interfere with us getting this bolted on, we'll go ahead and just get this kind of started threaded on. Now there was a little sticker on this part here that said not to torque this over 71 inch-pounds. So I think I'm gonna get the torque wrench and just torque it to like 70, 69. I like 69 better. Then we'll get this snugged up. And don't forget to plug this back in. So now before I install the compressor, I'm gonna actually check and see how much oil is in this. It says here that it's pre-charged with 3 ounces of oil, but I don't know about you, but I really don't trust the Chinese factory that put this together to actually measure out 3 ounces of oil accurately. For all I know, they put 3 milliliters in, and we're going to toast the system if we don't have enough oil. And you also need to pay attention to how much oil the system actually takes. So in this case here, F-Series excursion without rear AC, we need 9 ounces of oil. And also make sure it's the right type of oil. So what I'm going to do is take this little cover off here, and I'm actually just, and it might be under pressure. Probably should have said that and paid attention to that. Well, if there was 3 ounces of oil in it, there's certainly not now. Okay, now we're good. Now what I'm going to do, I've already cleaned this jar out. Just going to dump all the oil out and measure how much is actually in it. So far I've got 2 ounces out. And one thing you want to do too is try to turn this. Obviously just turning the pulley isn't going to do you any good. You need to turn the actual clutch. Okay, well that's close enough for my likings. We can see there's actually a little bit more than 3 ounces in there, especially when you figure how much of it ended up on the workbench. So now what I'm going to do is get our bottle here. This is actually 8 ounces, and just pour enough into here to equal our 9 ounces that we need. And there we can see there's our 8 ounce mark. There's our 10 ounce. And I went just a fuzz over 9, just kind of anticipating a little bit of this getting stuck to the inside of the jar when we pour it out. So we're not actually going to, if we put it at exactly 9, it's not going to have exactly 9 in the system. And another thing you want to do too, once you've got oil in it, is to spin it a little bit, just to try to distribute that oil, get air pockets out. Just spin it a couple of times, you know. I'm going to spin it like 10 revolutions just to try to get air pockets out, and also so that when we tip this thing up to put it back on the truck, it doesn't all just dump out. It'll actually hopefully be enough inside the system here. So I have my concerns about some of the oil dumping out when I go to put this on here for the compressor. So what I'm going to do is hook these lines up first with the compressor kind of angled up, and then drop it down onto the bracket. And make sure your O-rings are in here. And this did come with new alignment dowels, so we're going to use those. And we'll just get all 4 bolts started. And I don't know what the torque spec is on these 4 bolts, but snug is fine. Based on the size of the bolt, I'd say probably somewhere between 89 and maybe 110 inch-pounds. I don't know. And then the same with this guy back here. I don't know what the spec is on it, but good enough. And then don't forget to clip this little guy back on here. I forgot to get video of it, but down in here where the lines go into your condenser, there should be some O-rings in there too. You'll want to replace those if you're doing a thorough job like I am here. And plug your coil wire back in. So once you've checked everything over and everything looks good, everything's all put together, go ahead and get your gauges hooked back up. Only this time we're going to use the yellow line as well. And these fittings here, just do them finger tight. Don't get pliers or anything like that. They have O-rings for a reason. So get your vacuum pump plugged in, and we're going to go ahead and turn it on. Now we will open both of these up. A lot of times you'll see some steam and stuff coming out. That's moisture that's in the system. And what we're going to do, we're going to leave this on for about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes. So what we're going to do, turn these off. And then we'll turn our pump off. And make note of where this is right here. Right now we're looking at about 24 inches of vacuum, 24 inches of mercury. So we're going to leave this sit for at least 30 minutes, if not an hour, just to make sure this doesn't move. If it doesn't move, then that means our system is sealed up good and we can go ahead and add our refrigerant. Well, it's been a solid half hour and it doesn't appear to have moved at all. Never mind that. I spilled that. Since the vacuum test checked out good, now what we'll do is we'll just turn the pump back on, open these back up, and now we'll let it sit on a vacuum for at minimum 30 minutes. So, you know, grab a beer or whatever and let it do its thing. So while the vacuum pump's doing its thing, we can go ahead and check this again. Check for the proper amount of refrigerant. In my case, it is 2 pounds 10 ounces, which when I went to school, that was 42 ounces, which is exactly 3.5 cans, I think. Either way, when I did the math earlier, I know I needed 4 cans. So when it comes to buying your refrigerant, just get the cheapest crap you can find. These were, I think, 10 bucks a can at O'Reilly's. I think it's a little bit cheaper at Walmart, but you can get these that are, you know, 20 bucks a can, 30 bucks a can. It's all the same crap other than marketing, and some of them might have, you know, stop leak stuff in it or have the dye already in it. Some of it has oil in it. In this situation here, just get the cheap stuff. Just because the brand is Arctic Air doesn't make it any colder than what this is. It's all R-134a. Regardless of brand, it's the same crap. Alright, so it's been a solid 45 minutes that we've been pulling a vacuum on this, so that's good enough. Before we turn the pump off, make sure you turn your valves off on your gauge set, and then we'll turn the pump off. And we'll take this line off right here. This is where we're going to charge the system from. And be mindful that it may be a bit warm. So next what we'll do is get the can hooked up here and screw this down to open the can. Back it off a little bit, about a turn or so. And then what we want to do is purge this yellow line of any air. So we'll take this cap off. And then we'll just take a screwdriver and push in on that Schrader valve. Next, we're going to get the vehicle started and start introducing refrigerant into the system. And I'm going to put this here in the vent too, so we can monitor the air temperature coming out. See how effective we're getting here. And we'll kick the AC on to max. Fan on high. It's not going to really do anything right now. The compressor shouldn't even be kicked on. But as we introduce refrigerant into the system, the pressure will get to the point where it'll allow it to kick on. Make sure this is opened up a little bit. Do not open this valve. It'll be fine right now, but later on it could potentially blow the can up. Always charge to the low side. We'll just slowly open this up. side's starting to raise up just a little bit. Eventually, the compressor will kick on, and then it'll really start drawing out of that can.
A few moments later.
It'll do that a few times for several minutes. What's happening is it's kicking on and then the pressure's dropping below the safety threshold, so it kicks it back off. Just kind of keep shaking the can a little bit. It's going to get really cold, but it's going to tip it every now and then. You don't want to keep it tipped upside down because it'll just put straight liquid right into the system, and that can cause damage. When your can is empty, you want to close this off first. Back this out. And then we'll take it off of this can, put it on our next. Then screw this down. Screw it down until it stops. Then back it off about a turn. Then we'll come over here, open this back up. And continue. And never open this when you have a can hooked up. So as you can see right now, we're at about 225 psi. It'll blow that can right up. And that was the third can that I just hooked up. And as you can see, we're about 60 degrees. And I can tell you it hasn't been that cold sitting still for a long time. But we still don't even have all the refrigerant in it. Now, one thing to look out for if you've got an older vehicle like this one that uses a mechanical fan clutch, just sitting here idling, a lot of times, like the engine's probably just barely up to operating temperature. A lot of times what'll happen is the fan clutch won't kick on and you'll end up with pressures that look like this. And based on the ambient temperature, the low side's pretty close to where it needs to be, but the high side is way up there. So it can actually be deceptive. And what you can do is actually take a garden hose and gently spray some cool water over the condenser, and it'll drop those pressures back down to a more realistic level. Now is where the scale comes into play. We only need 6 ounces out of this can. So, set the tare. And now we'll just let it slowly draw out until we hit 6 ounces, and then we're done. So as you noticed, it was getting a bit dark by the time I was getting finished up last night, and you know, it's the next morning now, and I needed the truck today to go to work. So I was kind of in a hurry, so I just kind of stopped recording. You really didn't miss much of anything though. I just got the correct amount of refrigerant in there and then pretty much called it a night. So now that it's the next morning, I haven't actually left my house yet. I've just been sitting here in the driveway idling, getting my paperwork ready. And yeah, I wish I would have had the cerebral fortitude to test this before. But you can see here, I haven't even moved the truck. It's literally sitting here idling, and you can see that it's below 60 degrees, and I think it's pushing about 80 to 80. I think it's about 85 degrees right now. Actually, I probably should have checked that before I started recording. I'll check it and put the actual temperature right in here. But it's working great. It hasn't been this cold even going down the highway for months. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like now. So we'll check that here in a few minutes once I get going. Oh, and I just wanted to mention too that before I actually started the truck, that thermometer was reading just under 100 degrees for the internal temperature of the truck. So just to give you an idea of how well it's actually working. And it's supposed to get up to, I think the high is 90. Well, I've had the cruise set at 60 here for several miles, and the AC is just working awesome. I have all the vents pointed away from me. It's 85 plus degrees outside, the sun's out, and I'm actually about ready to turn the air conditioner down a bit because I'm actually starting to get kind of cold. See, the air coming out of the vents is about 45 degrees, give or take a degree or two. So, yeah, definitely a successful job here. So like I said, I was actually getting kind of cold, so I turned it off of max, which, you know, max is recirculation, and now it's just pulling outside air. And ideally what you're looking for with a R-134a Automotive system is about a 20 to 30 degree temperature drop from the intake air. And being that we're at 60 degrees coming out of the vents right now, and it's currently 86 outside, I'd say we nailed it. Well, it's now pushing 90 degrees, and I've been sitting here just waiting for these guys to get done so I can do my job. And I don't have it on recirculation, and obviously there's very little airflow going over the condenser. So right now it's actually getting kind of warm coming out of the vents, about 80 degrees, 78 actually. It is drier. It's pretty freaking humid out right now too, so that doesn't help matters. But, you know, I'll flip it over to recirculation, and you can already see it dropping. Slowly, but it did come down a little bit. There it's going. I mean, that's pretty much normal operation at this point. It is an older truck. The coils and stuff aren't as large as what some of the newer vehicles are. But, you know, I'm satisfied with how it's working. It probably would have helped too if I would have been smart and pulled the evaporator coil out and cleaned that off while I had everything apart, but I was kind of in a hurry and didn't really think about it. So anyway, hopefully this video helps you get your own air conditioner fixed. And if you want to see another tip on how to make your AC blow even colder and run even more efficiently, stay tuned. I'll have a video coming up for that here soon, and I will link it in the description when it's done.